Hey everyone, this is Bill D'Alessandro, and welcome back to another episode of Acquisitions Anonymous. This one really got me going because it is a huge e-commerce business with $8.5 million of earnings. So Michael and I dove into the complexities of this one. It has a factory in Cambodia and China, sells through Amazon. They're asking nearly 6 times EBITDA for it. It's a $50 million deal. Really, really interesting one. A lot of generalizable lessons about buying businesses and separating businesses from their inputs and making sure that they have arm's length relationships there. I think you guys will really, really enjoy this one if you're at all interested in international manufacturing, e-commerce, or just larger deals. So without further ado, hope you enjoy this episode of Acquisitions Anonymous.
This episode is sponsored by Acquisition Lab. Acquisition Lab, created by Walker Diebel, author of Buy Then Build, How to Outsmart the Startup Game, is an accelerator with a highly vetted, cohort-based educational and support community for people serious about buying a business. After going through the lab's month-long intensive, you have ongoing access to almost daily Q&A sessions with advisors, regular live deal review forums with Walker, hand-picked vendors for your deal team, and a very active Slack group with other searchers on this path. Our team personally understands how to buy a business and will help navigate all the complexities of the process, as well as provide a trusted framework, tools, and resources to support you from search to close. The Acquisition Lab recently celebrated its 70th business being acquired and well over $100 million in aggregate transaction value. The lab is here to stand by your side so you can take the right action at the right time and avoid wasting countless hours trying to go it alone. For more information, check out acquisitionlab.com, link is in our show notes, or email the lab's director, Chelsea Wood, at chelsea@buythenbuild.com. Bill, it is such a marvelous coincidence. We're both wearing the same clothes as last week.
You know what? One week we should switch clothes. We should premeditate, and I'll be wearing the Dura Software shirt, and you'll be wearing the button-up plaid shirt next
Represent
time.
Dura Software. Yeah, well, I went to dinner with Dura Software last night, and I had 2 glasses of wine, which has made my motivation for today go. So I'll be working.
It's amazing how that happens, right? You turn 30 or 40, I'm probably even worse, or 50, just one drink, you're done.
The worst was there was a guy who's childless there, as part of the business dinner. And after the second glass of wine, it was like parenting, workshopping. I was like, oh, let me tell you about this with parenting. Let me tell you about this with parenting. I even brought out one of my best bits, which is why parents are happy even though parenting sucks. Have I ever given you this bit?
No, give me the bit.
So here's the reason. Here's the thing. Objectively, you look at parenting, right? And parenting, everything sucks. It costs you a lot of money. You don't have any freedom anymore. You got to go on vacations when it's the most expensive time of the year. Your kids
clean up a lot of poop,
vomit, puke, poop all over you. If they're younger, they need your time all the time. If they're older and they're teenagers, they say the meanest stuff to you because they're just learning how to manipulate people. So objectively, there is very little that's awesome about parenting. But every parent is much happier. If you look at the stats, parents self-report being happier than everybody else. And you have to wonder, why is that? Objectively, it doesn't match the facts, right? So the interesting parallel is that if you look at it, what kids do to us is the same thing the Marine Corps does to convince you that the Marine Corps is great during indoctrination and basic training, right? It plays to human psychology, and kids brainwash their parents into thinking that they're happier. So let's walk through it. So, for example, you go into the Marine Corps, and the first thing they do is they give you a person who screams at you unpredictably with commands that you don't really understand and you are unintelligible to you. Who else also does that? Babies. What else does the Marine Corps do to you when you go to basic training? They prohibit you and they do not permit you to get a good night's sleep. You go through sleep deprivation. Who else does that to you? Babies. What else happens in the Marine Corps when they want to indoctrinate you? They challenge your boundaries of cleanliness and nastiness, right? So you're in there with your toothbrush cleaning up the toilets, right? Happens, what do babies do? They vomit and poop all over you. The first thing you do when you bring home a new baby is you discover that you better be careful because there's a good chance they're going to pee in your face when you're changing that diaper, right? So let's continue on.
They make you miserable in all ways, right?
It keeps going. What else does the Marine Corps do to make you feel like you're part of a team and part of a winning thing? They put you through a challenge that you're not sure you're going to make it through, but then you make it through as a team together on the other side and you develop a cohesive bond. Who else does that? Children. How many parents have you heard when they have a 5-year-old? They're like, I don't know if I could do this for 13 more years. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yep.
So that's the idea. Like, if you look at it objectively, parents are not happier. They just think they're happier. And you can see it because they're brainwashed, because nature has set us up to be brainwashed by children and parenting. And so the truth is, you are all miserable. You just don't know it.
Including you, right, Michael?
Look, okay, so here's the part about it, right? So if you're objectively unhappy, but you think you're happy, who really gives a shit? Because you're happy. It doesn't really matter if you're really not happy. It just matters what you think you are, because it's a feeling. So who cares? I'm fine with it. Like, yeah, brainwash me all you want. I don't care.
I've been deluded. It's fine.
You know,
it's fine.
Well, it's kind of like,
there's a lot of evolutionary biology too, though, that it's very important that you like don't ditch your kids. And,
100%.
That's why they look like you. That's why they look like the dad when they come out. It's so the father doesn't abandon,
100%.
right? Like, there's all kinds of evolutionary biology, like, to make you happy with this. Like, all the chemicals, literally everything is stacked to make you enjoy this
100%.
chemically.
100%. And there's one or two more parts to the bit, but that's the whole bit. But it's really true. And this poor guy at the dinner was like, I'm not sure coming to San Antonio was a good idea.
So if you ever go out drinking with Michael, this is what you have to look forward to. Sure. All of our listeners are like, man, it'd be really cool to get a beer with the Acquisitions Anonymous guys. And like, you're getting lectured about parenting. Wait, this sucks.
I'm not sure.
How much did I pay to win this auction again?
I'm not sure San Antonio was such a good idea. All right. So we got a big boy deal today. So let's talk about $8 million in earnings.
Ooh, this is a big one. So this is from my favorite business broker in the world, the folks at Website Closers. If you are a longtime listener to the pod, the sensationalism in these listings is bananas, and very, very often, I've not signed an NDA on this deal, but very, very often there's a lot more sizzle than steak in deals from this broker. So this is a home bedding e-commerce brand. It is the number one seller of bedding products on Amazon. It has $140 AOV, 100% year-over-year growth, so it's doubling, and it's 100% Amazon FBA. That means all orders are done through Amazon. Amazon warehouses all the inventory and ships all your orders for you. It has $48 million in revenue and $8.5 million in EBITDA, and they want $49 million for it. So that is a 5.75x multiple of earnings. They don't say EBITDA or cash flow. They just say earnings. So this is a chonky boy. So Website Closer presents a middle market company in the home bedding vertical. There are various product offerings in place to meet all user preferences, but it's historically positioned as a luxury offering. But they also recently launched a lower price point version of their product. There are two owners of the company. One handles the manufacturing piece of the business and is a prolific inventor with 25 patents. Throughout his career, he is focused on creating high quality and in-demand products for large retailers like Toys R Us, Target, Walmart. He has 3,500 employees in China and Cambodia. Sounds like an unfair advantage. I sure hope he sticks around after the deal. The other owner is a serial entrepreneur and a strategic operator of the business. He started his e-commerce career in 2007 as a head of sales at a multi-channel e-commerce software firm and quickly decided to start his own company, taking large-scale manufacturers directly to Amazon. From there, he launched his own Amazon brands and hired multiple virtual assistants to run them. After that, so much success developing and training VAs, he started a virtual assistant company that today serves high-profile e-commerce brands worldwide, assuming, I think, this one. And together they manage 19 companies and have never raised capital. So, you got to buy a business from any business. And the first thing you ask yourself is like, am I smarter than the guy that currently owns this business? Right? Michael, do you think you're smarter in this area selling Amazon than this guy?
I don't know, man. I think, by the way, my Holdco course is launching soon. I think I should take a Holdco course from this guy. So it's kind of a bad thing.
Insane.
It's kind of a bad thing to write in your in your listing. I mean, I think we rarely see something like this where the broker spends the first 3 paragraphs kissing the butts of the seller, and it's like, well, why do I care? Like, it's actually a bad thing to do, and exactly what you're talking about, which is like, oh, first thing it makes you think of is like, how much is this business dependent upon these two guys being involved in it? And the way they paint it, like these two guys walk on water, and scares the crap out of me.
What also scares the crap out of me, because anytime I and buying a business from someone, I would like to feel confident that I'm the smartest person in that transaction, right? do you want to enter a multi-million-dollar transaction where you're pretty sure you're the dumbest person in that transaction?
Well, that's every transaction, but
I
yeah.
don't, but like, this is like, I just don't understand why brokers do this. And they're like, you are buying this from the smartest, most savvy dude ever, and he doesn't want this asset. Don't you want it?
Oh, all right. We'll keep going. These guys
All
sound
right.
like ballers, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to know who these guys are.
3,500 employees in China and Cambodia. Like, this is a global business. Products for this brand are made in China and Cambodia. Orders are placed every 3 to 4 months, and payment terms are 30 days after shipment. The business makes use of a 100% stock inventory model. Full containers are shipped directly to Amazon facilities, assuming using Amazon Global Logistics, and they distribute and fulfill orders. The company utilizes a 3PL for filler stock to feed the Amazon DCs when stateside stock is lower. All products are FBA/Prime. Furthermore, management works with Amazon Global Logistics, for most of its shipping and is often quicker and less expensive. The retail giant works with the company to coordinate containers being shipped directly from China to their warehouses in the USA. This is actually really great. If you saw on Amazon and you were bringing in full container loads, Amazon's program called AGL, Amazon Global Logistics, instead of bringing your container, you importing it through probably the port of LA if it's coming from China, clearing it into a bonded warehouse or your own 3PL, parsing it. If you prep it right, Amazon will bring it directly into their own fulfillment center. So you save that second step. It saves a ton of cost, and you also get to piggyback on Amazon's ocean freight rates. So if you can do AGL, you have to push a lot of prep to the Asian side because everything has to be already barcoded the right way and packaged the right way. Like, it can't require any more touch. But if you can have it come prepped in the container, AGL saves a ton of money.
I did not know that.
So it's cool that they're doing that. It's definitely a way to save money if you're making stuff in China and selling on Amazon. So currently, sales are exclusively on the Amazon platform, and a favorable supplier terms and insatiable customer demand provide the business with excellent cash flow. Typically, $7 to $8 million of inventory is kept on hand, which ensures products are always in stock and supports the current growth rate. The company is not seasonal. However, Q4 is the busiest with holiday spending. There's also a peak in summer because of a surge in camping trips. Okay, maybe that's air mattresses. Both owners spend less than 10 hours per week on this business. One focuses on operations and architects Seller Central, delegates tasks to VAs and performs market research on competitors. The other spends time working his factories on quality and coordinating logistics. Fully trained team of VAs in India runs daily operations and is transferred to the buyer, or a buyer can use services of the VA company at cost that the existing owner owns and operates. The business is thriving. Management has no intention of slowing down. They have a lot of intention of selling this business to you for 5.75x EBITDA. Firstly, in addition to the premium line, the company is launching a new lower cost product line. Secondly, they want to expand to the UK and Canada, and the owners are interested in staying on in some capacity with the buyer. They plan on acquiring assets with the buyer, such as distressed Amazon brands, and putting them through vigorous programming to make them the top selling products in their categories, just as they have done with this company and multiple other Amazon brands. That's a very weird thing to tack on to the end of a listing. So, all right, Michael, $8.5 million of betting products on Amazon. What do you think?
It's interesting who they're kind of reaching out to here, and interesting that they're doing it through website closers, right? Like, I think if you read into this, I'm like, oh, these guys actually are looking for some sort of partial liquidity, type deal where a growth equity firm might come in or a buyout firm might come in and buy 40 to 60, 80% of the company and give them some sort of package as part of it to continue on and then right off into the sunset. But like, people don't do that with website closers, right? It's typically like $500,000 a year, like wedding blogs. And it's just bizarre to me that it's like in website closers.
I mean, this is a $50 million transaction. You can't get an SBA loan for that.
No, like you're hiring an investment banker. They're putting together a sim and they're calling like every private equity firm that does this size of deal because they're going to be the best payers. So it's just kind of a bizarre way of going after it. And like, I think part of why we chose it, it's like, oh, this is an oddball deal. Like, let's take a look at it. But $50 million deals don't trade with like 4 paragraphs of text on website closers.
So I have seen deals like this, right? Like the way too big Amazon only brand that eventually sells to private equity firm. I guarantee you what's going to happen is some lower middle market private equity firm who's never done e-commerce before is going to buy this. They're going to install, the seller is going to piece out. They're going to install some CEO like from the betting industry, right? That knows nothing about Amazon, but knows about betting. And they're going to lose all their money in like 12 months. And the thing will come back to market with half the revenue and negative EBITDA. I've seen this play like 5 to 10 times.
I know a guy here in San Antonio that's in aerospace, and like he has made a career out of building companies, selling them, and then buying them back at a discount. So he'll take these,
pick the stupidest buyer.
He'll just take
on purpose.
He'll take and grow these companies. He'll get them to $5 or $6, $10 million in revenue. He'll sell them for 2 to 3 times revenue. The next buyer comes along and totally screws it up, and then a year later, they're like, okay, well, like I'll buy it back for 1/3 the price, and nobody else wants it because the thing's suddenly losing money and shrinking. And he's done that 3 times. So he has a jet. I don't have a jet. This guy has a jet. So
there you go.
Smart.
So notice the guys who have the jet are the guy that sells the company and then buys it back, not the guy that buys it and owns it in the middle. That's how you lose your jet.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I don't know. A lot of those guys are expensing their jet to their funds, right? You go raise a $200 middle market fund. They're a middle market buyout fund. You're charging 2% a year in management fees plus expenses. That's a lot of cash flow to fly around on net jets if you want to. So maybe you just have to rent a jet if you're the private equity guy.
That's true. So this is why I think this is going to be a dumpster fire if this sells to private equity. The betting category on Amazon is brutal. It is one of the biggest categories on Amazon. Absolutely massive, huge volumes. And it is cutthroat competitive. Yeah. There are a ton. I mean, there's no coincidence this stuff is made in China and Cambodia. It's all made in Asia, right? And it's all these Asian sellers are coming online in this category in a big way. Black hat is absolutely rampant in this category. I would be confident that this company's listings, like at this volume, you're doing 50 million of sales on Amazon. These companies' listings are getting attacked daily with black hat strategies, putting, cancer causing chemical names in their description, hoping to get their listing suspended, 1-star review bombs. I mean, this stuff is like constantly happening. And if you don't have like a crack team of how to fend this off, your number 1 listing that you bought in a year is going to be number 10 because all this stuff is going to aggregate and you're not even going to realize it's happening and you just don't know why you're not ranking anymore.
And that's why this owner probably is spending hours each day checking in on these listings and you see that from the other Amazon sellers on Twitter. They're just like, guess what happened to me today? Like somebody claimed I have cancer causing chemicals in my toys. So brutal.
Yeah. And some categories are worse than others. Betting, kitchen gadgets, and human supplements are some of the most wicked categories on Amazon.
So what do you think other 19 companies are that these guys have built? Like what else are they doing?
It would not shock me, by the way. It would not shock me if like this is the mattress company and the other companies are all bedding and pillows and sheets, like all that other stuff. And this is the shitty one because it's mattresses and it's bulky and like the freight's a pain in the ass. And they're like, we wanted someone else to have this problem.
Dude, I think you have to like that these guys at least are vertically integrated. They appear to be like going all the way up to the factory, controlling that aspect of it, and then controlling the listing side. So at least that's a bit more defensible than people that are buying from, other intermediaries or factories that are not custom. Because if they have 3,500 employees, they have to have this has to be captive factories, right? Like they can't, otherwise you wouldn't have 3,500.
I think so. Yeah, this implies that it's captive factories. But what it also implies is like right now it's captive factories, but they're not selling you the factory and the 3,500 employees. You're about to become a customer of this factory, right? So all that tight integration is going away.
There was a trend, by the way, in the fireworks business, which is kind of similar, where people started running this scam where they would go to the Americans and say, like, we want to sell you a factory. in China. And then you look up and it turns out you can't really own a factory in China. So these people would be like, I own it. And then the CCP member would show up and be like, you what? That happened like
That's nice. That's cute.
Yeah, it happened a bunch of times. Total scams.
Oh boy. Yikes.
Man, this is the scariest listing I've ever seen. It seems like a great way to lose a lot of money really fast. Why didn't I guess they had to have been approached by Thrasio and all the Amazon roll-up folks, because this seems like a perfect Thrasio thing.
That's why they hired website closers. They want to sell this to an aggregator.
Yeah. But aren't those guys all dying now? That's what I've read, is they're all...
It's been a tough time. Yes. That whole industry has raised a shitload of money. And then they bought companies at a ridiculous pace in 2020 and 2021. Most of those companies source from Asia. And then in 2021, all of the Asian supply chains broke. So you had these companies that had laid out hundreds of millions of dollars of capital, which is about 80% debt capital. They had about 100, some of these aggregators have bought hundreds of brands. So they had maybe 100 parallel subscale Asian supply chains that all broke at the same time. And that, in summary, is what's going on in the Amazon aggregator industry right now, is the fallout of that.
You know what I do like about this listing is, like, when you look at people who make a lot of money and become very successful entrepreneurs, like, it doesn't ever look like, Lawrence of Arabia, like taking a mad leap at the beginning. It's like they just do it like incremental steps all the time. Like this guy, he started his e-commerce career in 2007 as head of sales at a multi-channel e-commerce software firm. Then he got bored of that and he decided to go start his own company, taking large-scale manufacturers directly to Amazon. And at no point was that $1 million bet, right? That was just a small bet. He probably just said, okay, flew over to Asia, found some orders, and then went and put them on Amazon. And then he just kept rinse, wash, and repeating it. And then he said, okay, well, I'm going to take that and turn it into my own brands. Just, it's incremental stuff here. And then he did the virtual assistants thing. And then he's like, oh, people want this. Like, I'll sell them to other people. Incremental bets. Like, at no point here did he do any sort of like, oh, I'm going to do the next Uber. It's all like, oh, okay, like I'm going to incrementally do this. And I talk about this effectuation way of doing like new venture creation. It's exactly this. Like, you try things, you do little experiments, you go all in on what works, and then you do it a bit more. So I love that. And then I have another point about the listing, but I'll pause there because otherwise this turns into
100%, right? Like this guy like hired one VA one time, and then like 15 years later, he has 3,200 employees in Cambodia. Like, that's how these businesses get built. And you're like, oh, geez, if I hadn't like Googled that one thing that one time and actually took action, I would never be here. Most big ventures, like, you don't just like have the grandest of all ideas. Like, I know I'm going to fly to Cambodia, hire 3,200 Cambodians to all make mattresses, right? And then we're going to like, that's not how it works. It's incremental.
Yeah, 100%. And then I love the second thing here, which is, I think, a lesson to learn about partnering. Like, he met his co-founder in 2015, and they quickly realized that their skills and interests complemented each other. One was really good at sourcing and managing factories, and the other one was really good at the sales side, right, the other end. And they partnered and complemented those two things together. And they grew really quickly. I mean, they just rode the Amazon platform like crazy. And again, you think about this. They started this business in 2017. 5 years later, they're doing $8 million a year in earnings and $49 million in revenue. Like, that's a crazy rocket ship.
You see it on the internet, on Amazon especially.
The scale of the internet is just crazy. It
really is
hard to tap into, but when you do, man, it just happens. So, well, what else do we want to talk about on this one? I'm still confused by how the summertime is like a big sales thing for them. Like, in camping, is this like really cheap bedding that people buy for camping?
They must be selling camping mattresses or air mattresses or something, or toppers or something. There's got to be something.
Yeah.
Some angle to it. The thing about this listing overall that I take away is, I just look at this and I go, too complicated, like too intertwined with the seller's other businesses. It's intertwined with the seller's factory. And like, one of the partners owns the factory. Like, they're getting preferential treatment. They're flying to Cambodia all the time. One guy probably lives there. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to extricate this from the factory side. And the factory is always going to own you, because without the factory, you're screwed. right? Like you have no way to replace that factory, and it's fine because he owns the factory, so he's not going to screw himself. Plus, it's definitely intertwined on the virtual assistant side with the other owner's virtual assistant business. Like this just does not give me the vibe of a business that is very separable. You know, you buy this and you're going to do a ton of work to tear it out of the seller's respective empires. And even if you do tear it out, you know, and become a third party customer of this mattress factory in Cambodia, like they own you, you know, and suddenly you're not the same guy. You know, I don't like this because it doesn't already have arm's length relationships with its inputs.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, you think about our buddy Michael Patron who does exactly this just for power tools on Twitter. And like, I don't know if you know it, but he has an unfair advantage, which is like, he has relationships with some people in China that like, they go to they like were best men in each other's weddings. Like, that's the kind of unfair advantage these folks who develop these relationships over years have. And it's just like a crazy thing to try to compete with. And anyway, just talks back to what you're talking about, like scary to do that. And then secondarily, like if you own a business, there's actually these checklists. I'm sure you've seen them, but they're like transferable value assessments. And it's basically a checklist where you go through and you look at your business and you give it a score that says how much of this business is really dependent upon me and how much can I transfer to somebody else. And it's crazy when you look at a business like this that's doing $8 million a year in profits, and like they're going to score terrible on that because there's very little they can extract from themselves. But the thing about those transferable value things, like you have to start working on them years ahead of time to have a good score. You can't just start doing it when you try to sell the business. Like you have to start premeditating, like how do I extract myself and make this thing a unit that can transfer to a new owner without me having to work in it and keep it going. And this is definitely one of those.
Because it usually involves hiring and training people and getting to arm's length contracts with any relating parties. And it's a lot of work.
Well, it's interesting also because like you look at these guys and how they work and what types of employees they talk about. They only talk about very low level employees, VAs, automated people, that sort of thing. So they've been geniuses around that, but you don't see anything in here about them talking about hiring people who are like higher level knowledge workers, right? And it's kind of a mistake. Like you end up with this business that will only scale to a certain size because it's a hub and spoke management model. You have one person with 500 systems and 300 employees reporting to the CEO. And I've seen people run businesses like that, and it's fine to do it that. It's just not transferably valuable unless you have like a real management team built into a hierarchy, which would help these guys a lot if they had done that. But they just may not be the type of people that can do it. Not everybody can.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Cool. All right. Well, this is like one of the most interesting ones we've ever done. This is super cool. But I love it's hard comment. Like you compare this to the tent business we looked at last episode, and like that's super easy. Like they're like, bring tent this day. What size tent do you want? I bring you tent. I take tent away. You send me money. Much, much easier than this, you know, like much, much easier than this. Just the pain in the ass factor is not there for sure.
And the risk factor of, you know, like you're spinning 10 plates in this mattress business, right? Anyone could fall apart. I mean, I would guarantee you, when you get the sim, this business got annihilated in 2021 with all the supply chain stuff. Like they're shipping mattresses across the Pacific. The container rates went from $4,000 to $30,000. You know, I mean, craziness.
Businesses like this, you have high fixed costs, you have variable demand, you have tenuous relationship with your number one customer, who is Amazon. Amazon is not your partner in this. Amazon is your customer, and they can cut you off like a light bulb. And a business like this can go to lose money very quickly and go from making $8 million a year to losing $3 million a year. And there's not much you can do about it because you got all those 3,500 mouths to feed in Cambodia and China. Like, what are you going to do with them? Like, it's tough. It's tough. And stuff like this is tough to transact unless you find a dumbass private equity firm with a lot of money. And turns out there's a lot of those.
There's a lot fewer of them than used to be. But that was easier in 2020.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Cool. All right. This is a great one. And ask for everybody. Or do you want to do the ask this week? What ask would you like to do?
All right. I'm going to do the ask. So the ask is, if you like this episode, we want you to not only send it to someone who you think would like it, send it to someone who you think would get value out of sponsoring it. Because we would really love to book a couple sponsors. Our audience is entirely people who are buying businesses, running businesses, borrowing money, right? Looking for banking relationships. They need accountants, they need lawyers, all those types of things. If you know anyone in your professional network that would get value out of sponsoring Acquisitions Anonymous, please send them our way. We would really appreciate it. Thanks, y'all, and we will see you next week.